Hi there, David here from daviddumayaudio.com, and in this video, I want to take a look at 4 pieces of software that use randomization and layering to create new sound effects. So the software that we'll be looking at are S-Layer by Twisted Tools, Soundweaver by Boom Library, LKC Variator by LKC Tools, and the Forge Randomization Engine by Spark. So what I'd like to do for each of these pieces of software is actually do a brief overview of them and then show them in use, give an example so that you can see it in context and how you can use it, and then go over the pros and cons for each of them so that by the end of this video, if you haven't gotten any of these or you'd be interested in picking some of these up, you can at least make a good informed decision to see which would be best for you and for your purpose. All right, but before we get into the video, if you are a sound designer and you are looking to either upgrade your gear or your software, I have a little gift for you. It is my Sound Designer's Gear Guide. It's a little PDF that I put together of just what I would do if I was going to start over again and what gear I would look at, what software I would look at. So all of that is inside the Gear Guide. So just check the link in the description. It's absolutely free, so you can grab that. All right, let's get into the video. All right, so what I'd like to do for each of these pieces of software is actually I'm going to use the exact same samples for each of them so that we can do like a fair comparison of how they work and what they sound like and stuff like that and what they can do. So what I've actually done for this one, so first thing we'll look at is S-Layer by Twisted Tools. And this is it. So it is a Reactor ensemble. So you do need the full version of Reactor, at least at the time of filming this. They have said on their website that they are looking to update it so that it's available for the Reactor player sometime in 2022. So we'll see if that does happen or not. But anyways, right now it's full Reactor player at the time of shooting this. And so this is it. So the samples I'm going to use, you can click on this little wave icon here, and you can see all the samples down here. They're all whooshes. So I have 127 whooshes that I've imported into here, and that's what I'm going to use for each of the examples for each of the software. All right, so let's do a brief overview of what S-Layer is and how it works. If you are not familiar with it, basically it takes all your samples that you load into here. So right now I have 127. It's just mapped across the keyboard, but really that doesn't matter too much because what it'll do is it'll pick out of those 127, it'll choose from 8 different layers. So you can see the visualizer up here. You can see it has 8 different bars. So those are your 8 layers. So it's going to choose 8 samples from all of these samples down here. Okay, and the samples that are going to choose are based up here with these parameters. So you have your sample here. So this is the samples it's going to choose. So you have your first layer here is going to be sample 112. The second one here, 112 again. Here 115, down here is 59, sample 59, down here sample 50, etc. So these are the samples it's going to choose from. And down here you have your range that you can set. So this can be like from sample 0 to sample 43. So now the highest I can go now is 43, and then the samples all change now. This is 35, this is 38, this is 39, right? So you get the idea of how it works. And basically this is the way that each of these parameters work. So you have your start time here, you have also your delay time. This is like how much it's going to wait between when each layer is going to get triggered. You have your pitch here, your pan, volume. Okay, and these are your main kind of parameters here on this page. So now what I can do is if I press the trigger at the top here, it's just going to choose those samples. Now, if I bring up the volume a little bit, you're going to actually see the visualizer up here move. Right, so you can see each layer, each sample being played and when it's playing, when it's getting triggered. So that's really cool. It's nice to see just what is happening there. Okay, so let's keep going here just really quickly. So down here you have your wrappers. So this is what you can assign to different parameters. So right now this is assigned to my sample. So I can just move through here and this is just going to go and scroll through different samples. So let's say I wanted to try a different sample. Now I can do this one and trigger it again. Now I have a different sound, and let's say I want a different one. Right, it's choosing all different samples from that sample bank. Right, so that's kind of cool and very useful. And then, of course, this you can MIDI learn and assign it to your keyboard, to any kind of fader or knob that you might have on your keyboard. Okay, so that's what these wrappers are for. You also have sequencers here. They have ABCD, which you see here also relates to these ABCDs under these parameters. So these are like, you can think of them as like LFOs, and you can basically assign it to any of these parameters. And what it's going to do is just go through that LFO. So if you look, you can see it's switching through all the different parameters, the samples as it's playing through this. So this is not the best example. Why don't we actually put this on something like pitch? This will be really obvious. Right, and you can see it in the gray here that the samples are moving. So that's what the sequencer is doing here. You can assign that to any parameter that has this these ABCDs on them. All right, so let's keep going here. At the bottom here, you have basically what are like snapshots. So these are like presets basically within S layer. So if let's say I like certain parameters that are set here like this, and I want it like this, well, that's great. Now what I can do is have it this is going to be saved on my snapshot number 1. I can then go to snapshot 2, and I can have a different kind of preset, maybe like this. Maybe I want like low pitch like this. And then what I can do is I can just go back and forth between the two, and they're just going to be there and ready to go. So that's what this is doing here. Here at the right, you have your transpose. If you have this on, you can play across your keyboard. So you'll pitch your sound up or down based on where you're playing on your keyboard. And if you turn it off, whatever note you're playing on your keyboard is going to be the exact same sound every time. So it doesn't matter if I play it high or low, it's going to play the exact same sound. The only thing about when you do take off transpose is that your C3 to, I think it's G, yeah, C4 to G4 is basically your scene selection. So that's what happens here. So instead of having to click on these, you can just play on your keyboard, and that's going to select your scenes from C4 to G4. But if you turn that off, I like to always have it off, because that way I can just play whatever on my keyboard and then see what kind of sounds I can get out of that. All right, so this is like the bulk of the plugin, of the software. Now there's a few more pages here, like you have your effects pages here. So you have your grains, so this is like a granular effects. You have your stretch, cutoff, resonance, and filter mode. And then over here you have your envelope, so you can actually control your envelope for each of the different layers. And then at the very end here, you have some inserts, which just routes these sounds to two effects down here. You have your reverb and your delay. And that's basically it. Here you have your stereo, or you can do multi-out, where you can route them out to different tracks on your in your DAW, and then you can do like external effects and stuff like that if you wanted to. Okay, so that's pretty much it. This is like an overview. So now I'd like to just kind of show you like quickly how I would use this and how I do use it, so you can have an idea of what you can create with it, what it might sound like, and yeah, let's do it. All right, so hopefully that gives you an idea of the kind of sounds you can get. Just a few other parameters here that I'll point out that I didn't mention. But basically up here you have your randomization trigger. So this randomizes any parameter that has this orange color that's lit up. This will randomize that parameter. So you have that. I don't have these selected, but you could select like all of these here. Same thing with the envelope. You could randomize all of those. So that's what this randomization button is doing. And then the trigger is just triggering the effect so you can actually hear it. And that's pretty much it. And then a few other things here on the side. You have your solo, mute, and mono. So if you want any of the samples mono, you can just select them here. If you want to solo anything, you can select it like that, or mute. You can do that as well. And then on the left side, you have your reverse, so you can reverse samples. You have your speed, so you can do half speed, double speed, or just regular speed. And then you have your phase, so you can invert the phase if you wanted to. And that's pretty much it. So that is S Layer by Twisted Tools. So let's go over some of the pros and cons of this. So some of the pros here that I had listed out is, one, that it's relatively inexpensive. It's only $59, which is pretty good for a plugin that's this flexible and can do this many sounds. Another thing that's really great about it is that it's really easy to create new sound effects from multiple layers. Like I showed at the beginning of using this, like you just click on this edit button up here. It opens up your sample pool. You can just drag and drop samples in here. So it's really easy to just import stuff in here. You can import up to 127 sounds, any sound from any folder anywhere on your computer, and it'll just randomize them and layer them automatically, just like that. So that's really great. And like I said, it's just fun to just start and like to pick up and start using it, because you just never know kind of like what sounds you're going to get or what they're going to sound like. And it's just really easy to start. I will say though that it's not 100% like great and useful all the time. Like a lot of the times, of course, depends on what you're going to import into here. But sometimes you might randomize and get some weird sounds, or it just doesn't work. So, like sometimes you have to play quite a bit with it until you get something that's useful and usable, but it's super flexible and just fun to play with. So for that, it's really great. So one of the cons about it, like I said before, is that at the time of shooting this video, you do need the full version of Reactor, which is $200, so $199 USD, if you don't already own it. So if you don't already own Reactor by Native Instrument, that's a big upfront cost just to get S layers, right? So it kind of doesn't make sense. It's a lot of money to put up just to get this, but that's definitely one of the cons about it. But like I said, an update is supposed to be coming down the pipelines. We don't know when, in 2022. So hopefully, when you're watching this, the Reactor Player, a version for S layer is available for Reactor Player, which would basically negate this whole con about it. But for now, you do need the full version of Reactor. All right, next, let's have a look at LKC Variator by LKC Tools. So LKC Variator is a Reaper, I think it's a script. I don't know if it's considered a Reaper script, but anyways, it's a piece of software that you use inside of Reaper to randomize your audio files inside of Reaper. So this is it right here. So let's have a quick overview, a quick look at what it is here. So there's your main section. Well, you have kind of like your menu up here, and then you have your main section, which is down here. So on the left side, you have your parameters that are gonna be affected, and you can turn these on or off if you want them affected or not. And then on the right side, the radiation. This is how much, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm actually not 100% sure. I think this is how much it's gonna affect it by. But I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on that. But it's basically how it's gonna affect the sound. And then at the top here, you have your randomize, which is going to randomize all the parameters, which I'll show you after, but not right now. And then you can reset all parameters, so everything goes back to 0. Decontaminate, I'm not 100% sure what that does. I know it like kind of resets your sound, but we'll have a look at that. And then mutate is what is actually going to change the sound. It's going to affect whatever process you have chosen here. And then Chernobyl just applies like everything in weird amounts, and it is just crazy. And I'll show you an example of that. All right, so now that we've done a quick like overview, and of course up top here you have some presets. If you have a certain arrangement that you like to have on or off or whatever, you can save it and load it really easily. All right, so let's just have a look here, and let's just go through these one at a time so we can see how it's going to affect it. So I'm just going to play you this sound. Again, these are the same whooshes from the same folder that I had from before that I was using for S layer. I just layered 3 here, and let's have a listen to what it does. So that's my sound. Nothing crazy, nothing interesting. Just a weird whoosh. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select File, and now I can click Mutate. I have to select these. Click Mutate, and now what you'll see is that it'll switch up the sound file from within that folder that I had these from. So I had 130, I think, some sound files inside of that folder, and now it's choosing different sound files and just importing them directly into here. So now I have a new sound. I can do it again. Again. I don't know why this one's not changing. There you go. Right, so you get the idea. You can switch between different sound files that are in that folder. Next here, you have your fade shape. So this is just to create some fades to your sounds here. So let's select them. Okay, I was trying to play around, trying to fix the fade shapes when I don't even have fades in there. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create fades first with this parameter here. There you go. So now it all has fades. You can randomize the fades. And then you can also, I think, randomize the fade shapes. There you go. So that's what that does. Okay, next we have our length. So this is how long or short the sound is. Then you have your content. So this is different than file. So file is actually going to choose a different sound file and import it in. Content is actually going to scan through that audio file to see what else is in there. So you can see it's kind of moving around. That's what content is doing. Next, you have position. Position, again, different than content. Position is actual physical position within your locators inside of Reaper. So you can see it moving positions here. Next, you have rate. I think this is your sample rate. So it just changes the file here. Yeah, you can see your rate here is at 0.881. Next, you have tape stretch. So it's going to stretch the file. You have your pitch. So it's changing the pitch of the file. You have your pan and your volume. Right, so you have all these different parameters that you can use. All right, so I'm just gonna get rid of these and I'm gonna load in some new sounds and see what kind of sounds that we can get from these. All right, so here's my original sound file that I had when I first started. And now what I can do is I can just randomize this, and now we'll see everything's a little bit different. Now I can mutate it and see what we get. Let's randomize all the parameters again. Randomize all the parameters here. And let's mutate again. Mutate again. So as you can see, it can be very hit and miss because the parameters just affect the sound so much. So what you could do is I could bring in my transports like this, so it's a lot less. Let's get rid of this one. Let's bring it in a new one here. And now let's mutate this. Right, so you can see everything can change quite drastically, especially depending on how much stuff, like how much your radiation amounts are. So that's kind of one of the things about this is you have to be very light in your processing of and in your use of LKC Variator. All right, so I'm gonna just import a new sound here, and the way I like to use it is for adding variation to my sound. So sometimes I'll use it with like using all the parameters and see what kind of sounds I can get and just play around with it because it can be really useful for that, or just the file and then just kind of sift through different sounds and see what you can get. But what I'm going to do is I like to do like very light pitch, panning, and volume. And you could even do a little bit of position as well. And I like to do like between 0 and like 10. Like it's really not very much, but it's just enough to add a bit of variation to your sound. So let's hear the sound before I mutate it. Then let's mutate it. Mutate it again. Right, you can tell it's very, very minor changes, but it's enough just to add that kind of variation that you might need for whatever sound effect you're creating, especially for like video game stuff. It can be really useful for that. All right, the other thing about LKC Variator, you have another tab here, which you can see, is you have different kind of modes if you want to set it up. So right now you have your DNA on the left, radiation on the right. You can switch that. So yeah, so you can switch that around. You can also do a horizontal view. So if I click that apply, close it, and reopen it, you'll be able to see it. So now you can see it horizontally like this. So that can be something just nice that you want to have. And here you have other options for like snapping mutations to grid, which maybe I should do, and then Chernobyl effects file. So just other options here if you wanted to use that. All right, so let's talk a bit about the pros and cons of this one. So the pros is that it's free. It's completely free, which is strange. I would expect to pay a little something, at least for this, at least a little something, if not like as much as Esslayer or some of the other ones that we'll be looking at in this video. But yeah, it's completely free. The only downside really is that it's only available for Reaper users. Like if you don't have Reaper as your DAW, you won't be able to use it. It's only usable inside of Reaper. So that's the biggest downside, obviously. And so anyone who's watching that, it doesn't have Reaper, unfortunately, you won't be able to use it. But yeah, apart from that, the main thing that I really like to use it for is adding variation, and that's pretty much it. So of course I can do way more than that, but that's just my preference for how I'm using it. And I just forgot to show one last parameter here, which was the Chernobyl. And I said the Chernobyl basically does all the parameters in various amounts. So if we do it, you'll see like everything goes like crazy. So I just want to show you before we go because I realized I forgot to mention that. So like you can do a lot of really weird and crazy stuff like this. It's basically destroying your audio, basically what Chernobyl does. But anyways, so that's pretty much it. This is LKC Variator by LKC Tools. All right, next, let's have a look at Soundweaver by Boom Library. So this is Soundweaver. It is a standalone application. It's a standalone application, so it's just a piece of software that you load, and it's kind of like a mini DAW, but very, very specifically created for designing layering, and randomizing sound effects. So let's have a look at this. So this is the main page when you load it up. You can see you have your project dashboard. You can open up previous projects if you have some in here. So what I'm going to do here is just do like a test project here, create it. Everything's fine here. Let's create that. Okay, next I am going to import the folder that I had from before. So what's great about Soundweaver is that you can just import entire folders of sound in here instead of individual sound files at once. So I can just import the entire folder. It'll search the folder and be able to load all the sounds in there, or however many I want. So here I can actually choose how many layers I want. So right now I'll keep it to 3. I want 3 sounds. You can enter keywords. So if you have metadata inside of your sound effects, let's say I just want whooshes that are, I don't know, sci-fi or something, I can put like sci-fi, and then it'll only pick the sounds that have sci-fi in the metadata or in the as keywords. So you can use the metadata. You can use the path name. So if it has those words in the path name, it'll use those, or it can be exact keyword or match word. And you can also exclude words. So let's say you don't want sci-fi, you can put sci-fi here, and then it'll exclude all those sounds. So very flexible in that way. So now I can just click randomize. Bam, just loads it right there. I have my 3 layers, 3 different whooshes that it picked from. And what's great about Soundweaver is that if you have multiple variations within a sound file, it'll split it up. There is a catch though, like you do need to have silence between the variations here. So it's not enough that it just goes to like nothing. You need at least I don't know how many milliseconds of silence you need, but you need a decent amount. I think it's like 50 to 100, something like that. So anyways, this is it. So let's do a brief overview of what you're looking at here. So here you have your different tracks, and kind of looks like a DAW. You can have solo mute, obviously. You can lock it. Let's say you don't want to randomize this section. You can go through the different variations here, or just randomize the variations here. You have your pitch that you can go up and down in percentage. You have your gain, your pan, and your randomize button to randomize the samples. And you have the same thing for each of these tracks. Here at the top, you have what is the exact same parameters, but for the entire group. So it's going to affect the entire group here. Here you can choose how many layers you want. So let's say I want to add more. Just click and drag, and I got more layers. So it's super easy. Keywords, this is the use of keywords. Same thing as we did when we started the project. File path, this is where on your computer is the file path that it's choosing the files from. And then I can just delete the group if I wanted to. Here at the right, you have your snapshot. So let's say I like this sound here. What I can do is I can just add it to snapshot by clicking the plus button here. And now I have it in my snapshot, and I can just recall it at any time. So as I'm randomizing and creating new sounds, I can just easily just click on the snapshot that I want to go back to, and it's going to load it super fast, ready to go. All right, next at the bottom here, you have your randomization engine. So you can randomize sound files. So if I randomize here, it's going to pick new sounds. As you can see, everything's changing. You can also randomize the position. This is the position from the center point. So every time you load a sound, this is what's also super powerful about Soundweaver, is every time you load your sound, it's going to automatically line them up at their transient point, so at their loudest peak point. So if you look here, I have all my sounds lined up at where Soundweaver has determined the transient to be. So I don't have to like line them up or anything. They're already lined up at the transient, so they're all going to sound in unison together, which is great. So now what this randomized position is going to do is it's going to offset the transient points. So you can see here the transient points are moving off. I can reset the position here, and now they're all back. Next here you have your pitch. So this just randomizes the pitch. So you can see here the pitches for each track is changing. So that's what pitch randomization is doing. So if I put it back here. All right, and next here you have your global pitch. So this affects every sound. All right, so let's actually have a listen here to what we can do. So that's my sound. Let's say I want my transport here to be like this. Okay, what you can do is double click at the top up here, and it's going to light up white, and now it's going to be able to loop. And let's randomize. I can add that to snapshot. Go again. Add to snapshot. Go again. Add to snapshot. Great. So now I just had 4 different snapshots. And what I can do is I can just click between each of these, and they just load, and they load super fast. So now what I can do is I can just export them. So what I'd like to do is just go down here. I can just click prepare for drag and drop. This is to export them. So I'm going to do a mix down of the snapshots. So you can do a mix down of random variations of this one snapshot. So if you have multiple variations, I'll take random variations of it. Or you can do just the current variation. but I'm going to do all the snapshots because I want all of these snapshots. And I can now click prepare for drag and drop. And now I can just drag this into my DAW like this, and then drag into my DAW. Or I can even drag it back into the session here. So now if I solo this, right? These are the 4 snapshots that were right here that I just dragged and dropped into here. You can also drag it, in, like I said, into your DAW, into wherever it is that you want to edit them. So it's super quick, super easy to, really quick and easy workflow. All right, so let's talk about some of the pros and some of the cons of Soundweaver. So let's do the pros first. So it's super easy to use, like I said, super easy to just drag a folder in, and then it just it'll search your folder, and then it'll just grab as many sounds as you tell it to, depending on how many layers you set it here. Super easy to set how many layers you want. Super easy to like randomize and then add the snapshot and then drag and drop out and back into your DAW so you can start working on other stuff. So it's really, really a fast workflow, which is really great. Another great thing is you have automatic transients lining up as soon as the file is loaded, which is, again, a time saver. And again, like I said, quick and easy snapshots and export. So let's talk about the cons. So one of the biggest cons for this one is the price. It comes in at $215. It does go on sale, usually just around Black Friday, but that's about it. And if it does, it's not by very much. I don't remember how much it does if it does go on sale. But yeah, it is quite up there in the price range. So definitely something to think about before even purchasing this. And the other con about it is that there's quite a few bugs in this software that I've addressed before, but I haven't seen any kind of indication that the developers are looking to update it in the future. And I really hope they do, because it's such a good piece of software and it's so fun to use that it's kind of annoying when there are little bugs. So like, for example, sometimes you'll load a sound and for some reason it just won't read the files from that folder for whatever reason. And like, there's nothing wrong with the file or the folder. It's not like I can't import it or export the sound files in other places, but for some reason Soundweaver doesn't read it sometimes. Sometimes there's issues with like the file paths name. So for example, if I try to like delete multiple file paths, I can't. Like I can only do one at a time. Let's say I try to delete, I don't know, let's say I delete... let's say I delete this file path name, and then I try to delete another one, like here, it won't let me delete it. I can only delete one at a time. I have to go out, back in, go path, and then keep deleting file names instead of just being able to click, and delete everything. So like, there's little stuff like that. I also made a whole video about like the Soundweaver, going more in depth about it. So maybe I'll link that up in the cards above. So if you want to know more about it, because there's a lot of good stuff, but there are also a lot of other little minute things. Like another one is like the pitch randomization. Let's say you randomize the pitch. There's nothing to like reset the pitch. Like I wish there was just a button and then it just resets all the global pitch back to 100%, but there isn't. So now I have to go in manually, click in 100%. As far as I'm aware, like maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's like some other way to do it. Like, so you can right click and then, so you can right click and then reset to default. But even then, it's kind of a pain in the butt. It'd be nice if there was just like one button to reset, especially because like, if you think about it, like you can have like infinite amount of these layers. And then if I had to go in to every individual one and reset to default, it's just a pain in the butt. It's a waste of time. So it's just like little things like this. So it doesn't make it a bad software. It's still very usable, still great, but it could be so much better if there was just these little tweaks to it. So yeah, this is Soundweaver by Boom Library. All right, let's have a look at our final piece of software here. This is Forge Randomization Engine by Spark. So this is actually very similar to S-Layer, except that it has 6 engines. So S-Layer only had kind of one engine or one sample bank that it could choose from to layer sounds. This has 6 different engines, 6 different sample banks that you can load 6 different sounds in them. So let me show you what I mean here. So here you can see the 6 layers here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you go into the import tab, you see you have layer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So layer 1, I can import 127 sounds. Layer 2, I can import another 127 sounds. Layer 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. So you can have a lot more sounds in here and a lot more variation, which is really cool. So why don't I just load some sounds in and then we'll go from there. All right, so I've imported all the same samples that I had for all the previous examples here. They're all the whooshes, the same whooshes, and I imported the exact same 130 some whooshes in each sample, in each layer here. So you can see layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, they're all the exact same samples. So just for the sake of this demonstration. All right, and now what I can do is I can just randomize and let's just trigger it and see what it sounds like. Okay, so before we go any further, hopefully you'll see that like one of the issues with this software. So the reason why you're barely seeing or hearing anything is because you can see that everything's pitched down so low that you can't actually see it. And the reason for that is if the only way that you can do that is you go in the edit tab here, you can see the root pitch of each of the samples, and they're all assigned to the sample that it's in. So this is sample 0, sample 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, etc. Right? And it's like that for each layer. So it's also setting the root, like it's setting it to a different key on your keyboard for each of these. So whenever you're playing it back, if it's really low on the keyboard, it's going to play super, super, super slow. So the issue with this library is that unfortunately, like when you're loading stuff in, it doesn't automatically set it so that it's the root note so that you can just hear the whoosh or whatever the sample is at its regular root note, the way it should sound. The only way that it's going to work is if you change that. And the only way you can do that, as far as I know, is if you go in here and then you change this to root 0, and then you do that for every single samples. And you can see how this can get very tedious and a pain in the butt very, very quickly. This is very time consuming. You can just go like this and make everything 0. And now all of these samples will play back at their regular speed. But guess what? If I have to do that for 6 layers times 127 sounds each, you can do the math. It's more than 700 times I have to do this, which doesn't make any sense. So in that sense, it's very unfortunate because this has the potential to be like another great randomization engine, except for this one little downfall. So it is possible to go in and do that and do all the edits and then make everything sound, and then you can get some sounds that are decent, but it's just so time consuming, it's not even worth doing. And as far as I know, that's the quickest way to do it. Maybe there's some other ways. Maybe other people can comment on it and share maybe some other ways around it. But as far as I know, this is the only way that you can do it. So right now, like I can't even get some sounds out of it. So what I'm going to do, just for the sake of this demonstration, just so you can see how it works, I'm actually going to load a preset where I did go through and put everything back to 0 so that we can actually have some sounds in. All right, so here we go. I've loaded another patch, and I'll show you here so you can see all the root notes. All the root is at 0, so everything should play for each layer here. Everything should play at its regular speed, like normal. So let's randomize this, and let's hear. So you'll probably see and notice a few other issues with it here is that you actually don't have, and as far as I'm aware, and maybe I'm completely wrong, so I hope somebody does correct me if I'm wrong about this, but you don't have any control over like the envelope of the sound when you're playing through these. Like I have no control over like stopping the sound. Like I only want it to last maybe like a few seconds or like have like a natural decay or something. But like the samples won't stop until they reach the end of their of the sample. So right now this sample is still going, and now it's done, even though the other samples were all done like 2 minutes ago. Like so it's kind of unfortunate in that sense because I have no control over the sound. So it makes it really harder to use. And you have to be very careful about like which samples you load into here so that you know how you can control it. At least as far as I'm aware. Hopefully I'm wrong and there's other ways of doing it, but as far as I'm aware, that's how it is. So let's look at some other parameters here. So you have your impact, your timing, your timbre, and your pitch. And what happens with these is that they get affected based on the input analyzer. So this is your sound, if I'm not mistaken here. So however loud your sound is, when it reaches a certain threshold, it'll trigger these effects. So right now they're pretty low. I'm not overly doing them, but maybe we do like this. And now let's have a listen. So every time I press trigger, it's going to randomize these effects. If I want to freeze the effects, you can just click here and then it's going to be... It should be the same effect every time I hit trigger. If I want to randomize again, take it off. And it's going to be a different randomization of all these effects. So that's what this is doing here. Here you have your glide, and then back here you have your background effects, which I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's just affecting the sound in different ways. They're a little bit more extreme. Right, so that is the bulk of this. So let's go over some of the pros and cons of Forge here. So some of the pros here is that, again, it's relatively inexpensive at $49, so it's great. It is a Reactor ensemble, though, so you do need the full version of Reactor. And what's really great about it, though, another pro here, is that it has 6 separate layers, 6 separate engines or sample banks that you can import layers from. So you have a ton of different samples that you can load, like I said before, over like 700 that you could potentially load in here to randomize. But like I said, some of the downfalls of it is that in order to actually use the samples, you have to take the time to be able to go in, hit the edit tab, go into your samples, and change the root note of everything in order to make it usable. And like I said, it's very time consuming. And again, the other thing I said as a negative is that you don't have complete control over the envelope of the sound. So if you have different length of sound files in here and you press trigger, the sounds are going to play. But if nothing is stopping, like if one sound is super long, it's not going to stop until it gets to the end of the file, which is kind of annoying. So, but apart from that, again, it's very powerful. It has a lot of potential. So hopefully we see some updates in the future for this plugin. All right, so that is it for this video. I hope you found it useful and valuable. So for each of these, what's really cool is there is actually a free trial for all of these, except for LKC Variator, obviously, because it's free, so you can just grab that and go ahead and have fun with it. But all of these have free trials or demos of them that you can use. So I'm going to put links in the description below if you ever want to try them out. And yeah, that's it. Let me know if you guys have any questions or comments, or if I missed anything that might be important. Let me know, and so that everyone can share the knowledge. All right, so that's it for now. Thanks so much for watching. And just a reminder to grab that little PDF, the gear guide for sound designers, if you're interested in knowing more about maybe what gear you might want to get or software to look into if you're heading in that direction. All right, so that's it for now. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.